I Love Lucy not only brought endless laughter through the brilliant comedy of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, but also hid behind the scenes dramatic and tragic stories from the lives of its talented cast. From broken marriages to addiction and lonely deaths, these actors faced struggles no one could have foreseen. Let's explore their journeys and honor the legacies they left behind. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Lucille Ball as Lucy Ricardo. Lucille Desiree Ball was born on August 6, 1911 in Jamestown, New York. When she took on the role of Lucy Ricardo in I Love Lucy in 1951, she was 40 years old, an age that was rare for a female lead in a sitcom at that time. With her iconic red hair, radiant smile, and unique charm, Lucille won the hearts of millions across America. The success of I Love Lucy not only made her one of the biggest stars of the era, but also paved the way for her to co-found Desi Productions, the studio behind classics like Star Trek and Mission Impossible. But behind the bright lights, Lucille's life was marked by quiet tragedy. When I Love Lucy was at its peak, her marriage to Desi Arnaz was falling apart due to his infidelity and struggles with alcohol. Every episode she filmed became a way for her to mask the pain and uphold the image of a happy family on screen, while in reality, she felt deeply alone in her own home. In 1960, after the final episode of the Lucy-Desi Comedy Hour, she had no choice but to accept a tearful divorce, ending a marriage that still left her heart heavy with regret. After the heartbreak of her failed marriage, Lucille sought refuge on Broadway with the musical Wildcat in 1960. However, stress and exhaustion weakened her health, forcing her to leave the role before achieving success. Known for being a perfectionist, Lucille kept tight control over everything at Desi. But the pressure sometimes made her seem cold toward her colleagues. Her relationship with her son, Desi Arnaz Jr., also suffered. She wasn't there for him during important moments of his life, and as he grew older, Desi Jr. fell into struggles with addiction. Lucille's final years were marked by loneliness and illness. Although she remarried and had Gary Morton by her side after Desi Arnaz's death in 1986, it seemed she lost the emotional anchor that had meant the most to her. She still wore her bright smile during her last public appearance at the Oscars in 1989, but behind it was a woman who had endured so much loss. Lucille Ball passed away on April 26, 1989, at the age of 77, from a ruptured abdominal aorta following emergency heart surgery. She left behind an estimated fortune of $40 million, the reward of a lifetime of tireless dedication to both art and business. Desi Arnaz as Ricky Ricardo. Desiderio Alberto Arnaz Ideacha III, known as Desi Arnaz, was born on March 2, 1917, in Santiago de Cuba. When he appeared on television as Ricky Ricardo in I Love Lucy in 1951, he was 34 years old. With his dashing looks, charming smile, and the presence of a Latin band leader, Desi quickly became an ideal figure in the public's eyes. But few knew that behind the glittering stage lights, he carried the sorrow of losing his homeland and constantly battled inner demons. While I Love Lucy soared in popularity, Desi's personal life spiraled into chaos. The stress of running Desi Productions and keeping up the image of a model husband on screen clashed with nights of heavy drinking, endless gambling, and secret affairs. Episodes like Lucy. Does a TV commercial and job switching only deepen the divide between his fame and the loneliness of a man losing himself? Desi loved his work, but that passion pushed him into a cycle of tension, leading him to vent through alcohol and angry outbursts that left Lucille emotionally scarred. After I Love Lucy ended, Desi tried his hand at producing shows like The Untouchables, but his career never regained its former glory. Even his later appearances, like in The Mothers-in-Law, only highlighted his exhaustion and sense of being lost. His marriage to Lucille ended on his birthday in 1960, leaving a deep wound in his soul, though the two retained a strange bond that blended love and regret. Desi retreated to Del Mar, where he spent his final years in semi-seclusion with his second wife, Edith Mack Hirsch. In his last days, Lucille called Desi on what would have been their 46th wedding anniversary. Her choked words of love over the phone felt like the closing of a chapter filled with both glory and sorrow. Desi Arnaz died on December 2, 1986, at the age of 69 from lung cancer, a result of his lifelong love of cigars and heavy smoking. His estate was estimated at about $20 million, a modest sum compared to the heights he had reached with I Love Lucy and Desilu Productions. William Frolley as Fred Mertz. William Clement Frolley was born on February 26, 1887, in Burlington, Iowa. When he took on the role of Fred Mertz in I Love Lucy in 1951, he was 64 years old. Fred Mertz was the stingy but kind-hearted landlord, always a steady presence for Lucy and Ricky. But behind the laughter, Frolley carried a life filled with ups and downs and emotional scars that even he could not erase. Before I Love Lucy, Frolley had appeared in Miracle on 34th Street, 1947, playing a clever political advisor who left a lasting impression with the quiet charm of a seasoned actor. Yet the more famous he became, the deeper he sank into drinking and volatile behavior. In the years before he found success on television, Frolley was gradually forgotten by Hollywood because of his drinking habits. He even punched a colleague on a Broadway stage and was fired from several roles. When Desi Arnaz gave him a chance with I Love Lucy, it came with a stern warning. If Frolley ever showed up to set drunk, he would be fired immediately. Strangely enough, throughout his time on I Love Lucy, Frolley always knew his lines after just one read and rarely caused trouble for the cast and crew. However, his relationship with Vivian Vance, who played Ethel Mertz, was a constant source of tension. They openly disliked each other and often exchanged sharp remarks, creating a sometimes stifling atmosphere on set. After I Love Lucy ended, Frolley went on to appear in My Three Sons, 1960, playing the kind Uncle Bub, but failing health and old age made it harder for him to keep up with the work. In his final years, Frolley lived in near solitude, appearing occasionally in guest roles that seemed like faint echoes of his former glory. William Frolley passed away on March 3, 1966, at the age of 79, after collapsing from a heart attack while walking along Hollywood Boulevard. His estate was valued at about $1 million, a small sum for a career that had spanned decades, marked by both success and deep loss. Vivian Vance as Ethel Mertz. Vivian Vance was born on July 26, 1909, in Cherryvale, Kansas. When she accepted the role of Ethel Mertz in I Love Lucy in 1951, she was 42 years old. Ethel was the sweet, loyal best friend of Lucy, but in real life the role brought Vance great pain because it confined her to the image of being older and less attractive than Lucille Ball. This fueled a bitter feud with co-star William Frolley that lasted throughout their time working together. Before I Love Lucy, Vance was beloved on Broadway, especially for her role as Nancy Collister in the musical Let's Face It, 1941, alongside Danny Kaye. But even though she had once shone in singing and dancing parts, Vance could never escape the shadow of Ethel Mertz, a role that haunted her for life. Behind the scenes, she battled severe depression and was even hospitalized for mental health treatment at the peak of the show's fame. The pressure over her appearance and cruel remarks about her weight added to her suffering, even as she brought joy to millions. After I Love Lucy, Vance continued working with Lucille Ball on The Lucy Show, 1962 to 1965, but eventually left in search of herself. She tried to revive her career through films like The Great Race, 1965, hoping to break free from Ethel's image, but fate seemed unkind. Her personal life was filled with failed marriages and rumors about same-sex relationships, scandalous in that era. which only deepened her isolation. Despite marrying 4 times, Vance never found lasting happiness, and she gradually faded into sadness in her later years. Vivian Vance died on August 17, 1979, at age 70, from complications of metastatic breast cancer. She left behind an estate valued at about $2 million, a modest sum compared to her tireless contributions to the world of entertainment. Doris Singleton as Carolyn Applebee. Doris Singleton was born on September 28, 1919, in New York City. When she first appeared in I Love Lucy in 1953 as Carolyn Applebee, she was 34 years old. Carolyn was the snobbish, sometimes bothersome friend who played a key role in many of Lucy Ricardo's hilarious adventures. Singleton quickly became a fan favorite, but behind the scenes, her life was not without its troubles. At the height of I Love Lucy's success, rumors swirled that Singleton and Lucille Ball had a quiet, simmering tension fueled by unspoken jealousy. Though they appeared friendly in public, this strain allegedly cost Singleton an opportunity in a side project she had long hoped for. After leaving I Love Lucy, she appeared in notable shows like The Adventures of Superman and Perry Mason, but none of these roles helped her break free from the shadow of Carolyn Applebee. In later years, Singleton reunited with Lucille Ball on The Lucy Show, 1966. And here's Lucy, but the distance between them seemed impossible to bridge. In her personal life, Singleton bore the burden of her husband Charles Isaac's gambling habit, which led to financial crises that forced her to seek help from friends. Still, Singleton maintained her graceful and private demeanor, determined to overcome challenges and continue her television career even as opportunities dwindled. Doris Singleton passed away on June 26, 2012, in Los Angeles, at the age of 92, after complications from cancer. Her estate was estimated at about $1.5 million, mostly from the roles that made her a familiar face on television screens for generations. Barbara Pepper, as Chorus Girl. Barbara Pepper was born on May 31, 1915. When she first appeared in I Love Lucy at 37 years old, she played small parts such as party guests or neighbors, adding subtle charm to the background of this beloved show. But her life soon took a tragic turn. The true heartbreak began when her husband, actor Craig Reynolds, died in a motorcycle accident in 1949. Grief drove Pepper into alcoholism, and from being a sought-after star, she became someone directors hesitated to hire. She was once considered for the role of Ethel Mertz in I Love Lucy, but was ultimately rejected due to her drinking problem. A bitter twist, since William Frolley, who played Fred Mertz, battled similar issues yet was accepted. After that, Pepper appeared only sporadically in minor television roles, such as Mrs. Doris Ziffel in Petticoat Junction and Green Acres, but poor health brought on by her destructive lifestyle eventually forced her to stop acting. Lucille Ball tried to help her friend, offering job opportunities and urging Pepper to seek treatment for her addiction, but all efforts failed. Many nights, Pepper was seen wandering drunk outside nightclubs and was even detained by police for causing disturbances. In the end, she had to pawn her last valuable belongings just to survive. Barbara Pepper died on July 18, 1969, at the age of 54, from a stroke caused by coronary artery disease. She left behind little, an estate estimated at under $100,000, closing the chapter on a life of talent overshadowed by sorrow. Mary Jane Croft, as Betty Ramsay. Mary Jane Croft was born on February 15, 1916, in Muncie, Indiana. When she first appeared in I Love Lucy as Cynthia Harcourt, she was about 35 years old. But she made a stronger impression later as Betty Ramsay, the stylish neighbor of the Ricardos after they moved to Connecticut. Mary Jane Croft's life was one of quiet dedication, touched by tragedy. While working alongside Lucille Ball in The Lucy Show, she suffered the devastating loss of her only son, who was killed in the Vietnam War, a wound that left a lasting mark on her heart. Despite her grief, Croft remained composed and continued appearing with Ball in Here's Lucy and specials like Lucy Calls the President, 1977. She also worked on other television shows, including The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet and Our Miss Brooks, but her fame was always eclipsed by bigger stars. Croft's television career often cast her as the supportive wife or dependable neighbor, but her private life had its share of challenges. 2 marriages, including a long union with producer Elliot Lewis, could not ease the loneliness and quiet sacrifices she endured. Though Desi once gave her the chance to star in her own series, The Two of Us, the project never materialized, leaving her dream of solo stardom unfulfilled. Mary Jane Croft passed away on August 24, 1999, at the age of 83. Her estate was valued at about $2 million, earned through a long, steady career playing kind, familiar characters, whom audiences always recognized, even if they sometimes forgot her name. Shirley Mitchell, as Marian Strong. Shirley Mitchell was born on November 4, 1919, in Toledo, Ohio. When she appeared in I Love Lucy at 34 years old, she played Marian Strong, Lucy Ricardo's friend known for her unmistakable laugh. From her early days in radio on the First Nighter program in Chicago to her standout role as Layla Ransom in The Great Gildersleeve, Mitchell built a reputation as a talented actress who was, nonetheless, often typecast in humorous supporting roles. Mitchell's career was a tireless effort to break free from the confines of comedy. After I Love Lucy, she appeared on the Jack Benny program and Pete and Gladys, but greater recognition in drama always eluded her. Her quiet frustration deepened in her personal life, where her marriage to composer Jay Livingston, seen by the public as happy, was in fact strained by emotional distance and rumors of infidelity on both sides. Although she proved her skills in shows like Perry Mason and Please Don't Eat the Daisies, major stardom remained out of reach. In her later years, Mitchell kept working, guest starring in series like Three's Company and lending her voice to the Roman holidays. But behind the scenes, she faced family tension. One of her children once accused her of putting fame ahead of family, leaving a painful rift. Though she maintained a clean public image, there were whispers that her tendency to meddle in scripts made some colleagues wary. Shirley Mitchell passed away from heart failure on November 11, 2013, at the age of 94. Her estate, largely from her long television career and inheritance from her marriage to Livingston, was estimated at about $1 million. Elizabeth Patterson as Mrs. Trumbull. Mary Elizabeth Patterson was born on November 22, 1874, in Savannah, Tennessee. When she joined I Love Lucy at 78 years old, she played Mrs. Trumbull, the elderly, kind-hearted neighbor of the Ricardos and devoted caretaker of little Ricky. The role brought her success, but it also came with its share of personal difficulties. Patterson's life was marked by quiet sorrow. She never married, and within the industry, whispers persisted about a youthful romance that ended in heartbreak, prompting her vow to remain single for life. On set, Patterson often avoided cast parties and was sometimes seen quietly weeping, clutching an old letter whose contents no one ever knew. Her perfectionism with every line of dialogue sometimes created tension with younger colleagues, and this insistence on precision led to her being passed over for many film projects in the 1940s, as Hollywood sought fresher, more flexible talent. Though she was praised for her role as Eunice Habersham in Intruder in the Dust, 1949, a landmark film addressing racial injustice, Patterson gradually faded from public memory as age caught up with her. She spent her final years in solitude at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, once home to many famous stars. Elizabeth Patterson died of pneumonia on January 31, 1966, at 91 years old, and was buried in her hometown of Savannah. Her estate was estimated at about $500,000, the result of a long career that was never fully honored as it deserved. Katherine Card as Mrs. Mcgillicuy. Katherine Card was born on October 4, 1892, in Butte, Montana. When she first appeared in I Love Lucy in 1954, She was 62 years old, portraying Mrs. Mcgillicuy, the bumbling but loving mother of Lucy Ricardo. Although she revealed her hidden talent through the role, Card remained in the shadows as a supporting player, much like her real life. Her private life was filled with heartbreak. She married in 1910 and had one daughter, but tragedy struck in 1943 when her only child died, leaving Card emotionally devastated. She withdrew, pouring herself into work as a way to escape reality. Despite her dedication, she was often turned down for roles due to her age and appearance, even as she obsessively perfected every line. In the 1950s, she appeared in A Star is Born, 1954, but her part was cut from the final release and only restored in later versions. On set, Card struggled with severe anxiety. She often spent sleepless nights rehearsing, determined that every word be flawless, which led to panic attacks before filming. At times, she became convinced that colleagues were quietly shutting her out and that old rivals were tracking her every move. Her appearance in the Lucille Desi Arnaz show in 1959's The Ricardos Go to Japan was among her last, as her health and spirit declined. In her final years, Card lived quietly and alone, avoiding industry gatherings, nearly forgotten by Hollywood. Katherine Card died of a heart attack on March 1, 1964, at 71 years old, leaving behind a modest legacy and an estate estimated at about $300,000, built from small but heartfelt performances. Charles Lane as casting director. Charles Lane was born on January 26, 1905, in San Francisco, California. When he began appearing in I Love Lucy in 1953 at 48 years old, he took on roles such as the grumpy casting director or public official, creating a familiar screen persona that would follow him throughout his career. His performances helped sustain a career that spanned more than 7 decades, though it came with bitterness, as he was never nominated for an Emmy despite appearing in over 250 films. Off-screen, Lane was known for being difficult. He often created tension by openly mocking colleagues as mediocre, and once nearly got into a fistfight with the director over a scene's staging. Although he was married to Ruth Cavell from 1931 until her death in 2002, Lane spent his later years living separately and in isolation. His son once described him as a distant father who rarely showed affection, consumed by his career at the expense of his family. Even during his work on Petticoat Junction and The Lucy Show, many co-workers found him hard to approach because of his harsh nature. Lane frequently expressed frustration that Hollywood never properly recognized his talent. He believed awards were given to talentless schemers, leaving him sidelined despite his long service. His small role in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, 1963, was, in his eyes, one of the few times he could truly express his individuality. Even at 101 years old, he lent his voice to The Night Before Christmas, 2006, proving he never wanted to stop. Charles Lane died in his sleep on July 9, 2007, at 102 years old, in his longtime Brentwood home, closing the book on the life of a character actor deeply tied to Hollywood's golden age. His estate was valued at about $2 million, the fruit of a long career that never brought him the star status he dreamed of. Frank Nelson as Ralph Ramsay. Frank Brandon Nelson was born on May 6, 1911. When he first appeared in I Love Lucy in 1951 at 40 years old, he played Ralph Ramsay along with various other supporting roles, leaving a lasting impression with his distinctive voice and his famous line, "Yes." The role helped pave the way for his career, but Nelson's life was not without turmoil and sadness. Known for being a perfectionist and controlling, Nelson often demanded script changes to suit his performance style, creating tension with writers and colleagues. His roles, such as game show host Freddie Fillmore in I Love Lucy and his appearances in Sanford and Son, kept him in the public eye, but could not conceal the simmering conflicts behind the scenes. Rumors circulated that Nelson had quietly sabotaged opportunities for younger voice actors out of fear they would surpass him. His marriage appeared stable from the outside, but in reality was marked by turmoil, with whispers of infidelity and a scandal involving a young actress he once mentored, a matter reportedly settled privately to protect his reputation. He was also said to have been distant with one of his children, who publicly criticized Nelson for putting his career above family. Frank Nelson died of cancer on September 12, 1986, at the age of 75. His estate was estimated at about $1 million, built from decades of work in hundreds of roles, though he never reached the pinnacle of leading star status. Tennessee Ernie Ford as Cousin Ernie. Tennessee Ernie Ford was born on February 13, 1919. When he first appeared in I Love Lucy in 1954 at 35 years old, he played Cousin Ernie, a country character who brought humor with his warm-hearted nature and deep voice. Before that, Ford was already a country and gospel music star with hits like The Shotgun Boogie, and he reached the peak of his fame with 16 Tons in 1955, a song that made him a national sensation. While making his mark on I Love Lucy, he was also hosting The Ford Show, where he insisted on singing a hymn at the end of each episode despite pushback. Resonate with fans. The fates behind I Love Lucy leave us both sorrowful and amazed at the tragedies and resilience of its stars. From Lucille Ball to Keith Thibodeau, each is a piece of this legendary puzzle. Which character was your favorite, and which story haunts you the most? Share your thoughts and hit subscribe to uncover more secrets of Hollywood.